All right, so we're back on the E30 again here today. Haven't touched this car in 2 weeks. We had a ridiculous snowstorm last weekend and had like 3.5 feet of snow, most of which is melted already. Luckily, I was able to get the car kind of nosed in the garage here. There will be some noise from the ice pellets falling, unfortunately, but we'll do what we can. Goal for today is to get the thermostat changed. The car, up until this point when I've been running it, overheats very quickly and the coolant hoses never get warm, which tells me the thermostat is stuck closed and or the water pump isn't moving any fluid. So we're going to start with the thermostat. That's a little easier and cheaper thing to do. So I've got a Mali brand, or also Bear looks like too, from German Parts, and the thermostat housing gasket. So we're going to try and put those on, and we'll go through the steps of how to get the thermostat out. This is the casting for the thermostat right here. So we'll have to move some other things like the camshaft sensor. You're supposed to drain the coolant out of the radiator. You don't have to. I just have a big steel pan that I'm going to put under the car to catch any coolant that comes out when you take the hoses off, because there will be some. And we'll try and get the old thermostat out, and we might actually, depending on the condition that it looks like it's in, we might actually do a boil test and see if it is actually stuck closed, or if this is all just futile because it's the water pump that's not working. So let's dig into it. We'll see what we can get figured out. All right, so let's dig into this here. Got to remove the camshaft sensor and a little bit of bracing it has there. As I mentioned, the cap screw that holds the sensor in is an M6 internal hex. So we'll get that out of here first. So the goal here is just to move this bracket. It actually has another wire going down to the crankshaft sensor, I believe it is, just to get it down enough to get the top cap screw for the thermostat housing there. So that one there and that one there are the top two for the thermostat housing. So this casing has another wire going down below, and it also goes to the cam sensor there. So I just pulled this out a little bit, moved that down a little bit to be able to get to this one, get it loosened out, and that one. Forgot to mention before too, I think the actual procedure says you're supposed to remove the clutch fan there. I don't really want to mess around with that. You can do it without removing it. It just makes your life a little bit easier because you can fit tools in there a little better. And before we go any further here, I'm also going to put the drain pan under the car, because as soon as we start loosening fasteners on the housing, it's probably going to start to leak coolant. So I'll do that here, and then we'll continue. All right. The big catch pan underneath, so that hopefully any coolant that comes flogging out of here will grab and not go on the floor. Will be good. That we have to put it back in, so. Okay. Probably also a good idea, especially if the car was warm, to release the pressure on the cooling system before you go too far, and then it's spraying everywhere. I didn't let it get very warm moving it, so it should be okay. All right, let's got those two. So let's take the clamps off before we get any further here, and then the housing's moving around. Take the clamps off of the two hoses that come to the housing. These ones I'm assuming are original, or an M6 or a 6mm hex on the gear clamp, or you can use a slotted screwdriver if you wanted to, I guess. Alright, then for the fun part, taking the hoses off without making a giant mess. It's going to make a mess, but Try and limit it, I guess. I'm presuming it's going to make a mess. Maybe it doesn't have that much coolant in it. Oh yeah, there it goes. Okay. So, is it going in the pan is the question. And I'm going to do a trick that I saw somebody, oh my goodness. Okay, we got to do a cooling system flush very shortly here. Try and show you this. See that brownie color that's like a third of the hose? That's all sludge. And it's all down the side there too, you can see. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if the rad is completely plugged. So I don't know what we're gonna do with that right now. It'd be nice to do a flush right now, but not exactly practical, especially coming into the winter. So the water pump could also be toast based on looking at that as well. So we'll see what happens when we get the housing off here. So yeah, instead of losing all of your coolant or as much coolant, just tuck the hose up into the side. Oh, and that's another thing, is loosen the upper clamp on this upper rad hose, so that once you've taken it off of the thermostat housing, you can tip the pipe up so the coolant doesn't come out of it. Not that there should be too much at that end with everything we just lost out of the lower end here. Yeah, there's nothing there, so even better. Okay, so all that should be left now, there's two 10 mil cap screws on the bottom, same as the two that were on the top there. And once we get those out, we can knock the housing off. And when you take the housing off, then of course a bunch of coolant's going to flog out of the engine because the thermostat's holding it all back if it's cold. Okay. See if I can do this blind. Hope I've got the right one here. There is actually, I think I lied. Yeah, there are actually two on each side. So double check this, but it looks like you want to aim for the ones that are more recessed in the engine. Where's the bolt now? Well, based on the fact the housing is moving, I'd say I got the right ones. There's also no coolant flowing out of it, which is both good and puzzling. All right. So with that, we should be good to pull the housing off and see if it's Niagara Falls or not. It is very snug with the fan in the way. But it should be able to be done. Come on. Maybe. Maybe not. The fan is fighting me hard. Come on. Come on. Yep. There we go. There you go. It is doable. Wow, the sludge is... As I dump the light over. The sludge is unreal in there. So we're gonna try and clean that out as best we can. And the thermostat is still stuck in the hole, which supports what I was thinking, that it's seized. So presumably still when I go to take the thermostat out there, there'll still be a flood of coolant all over everywhere. So, I can't get the camera in there. There's the thermostat in there. Looks very gungy. And I'm sure we're gonna have a flood when we go to pull it out here, but let's pull it and find out. I don't know how hard it's gonna be to get out of there. Hopefully not too much so. Okay, maybe I lied again. Try not to damage it either, because I'd like to know if it was actually the problem or not. Yeah, there it goes. Yeah, some coolant, but not much. But also, again, looking at the huge pile of sludge jello in the engine block, I'd say that's not helping anything. So here is the lovely thermostat. It's very gungy, so I would not be surprised at all if it's stuck closed. But what we'll do to confirm that is we'll go and stick it in a pot of water and heat the water up. These are supposed to be an 88 degree thermostat, I believe. So if we get to with the water boiling and it didn't open, then we know that it was stuck. And that's only one half of the fun. I don't know how well I'm gonna be able to show it again here, but I can't get the camera in there. Look at all that sludge jello. It's nasty. That's what happens when you've got aluminum cylinder head. I think the block is cast on these. Aluminum cylinder head, aluminum coolant pipe, that kind of stuff, and it sits for a long period of time. The coolant corrodes the aluminum even though it's not supposed to technically, and you end up with that. So yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to do about all the jello, because if the water pump is all full of that, then it's never going to move any coolant anyways. Maybe it would be smart for us to put the system back together with no thermostat for now and try and get it warmed up a bit. It's not going to warm up much with the coolant flowing continuously, but get it warmed up enough that we can get some of the sludge to move, and then maybe do a coolant dump. Really, it needs to be filled up with just water and run up the temperature and dumped several times, but again, it's winter time, so that might have to wait until the spring. We'll have to see here. So upon a little further investigation here, I think a lot of what I was thinking was sludge is actually ice. So this coolant mixture is right on the border of being too high on the temperature range for Ontario at least. Now the car's been sitting outside for, I don't know, 10 years. So if the block isn't split already, it's not going to be split now, but it would still be a good idea to get it heated right up and thaw all the ice, and then probably add some pure coolant to it to try and bring the temperature range down so that it'll be okay and it won't freeze and damage anything. So we're gonna go in now and we'll do a test on the thermostat and see if it's actually stuck closed. If it is, that'll be good to know that that's actually what the problem is with the heat at this point and not something else. If the thermostat works fine, then we're looking towards like water pump and or, I mean, the coolant's starting to freeze, but when we ran it the first time, it was well above 0. So I don't think it's anything to do with the coolant freezing, but we'll investigate some more here. All right, so to test your thermostat, any conventional thermostat, you're gonna need a pot of water, some kind of a thermometer to see what temperature the thermostat actually opens at, if at all, a piece of string that you'll somehow tie to the pot to hang the thermostat in the water. And the tricky part is to put the piece of string through the seam in the opening of the thermostat. That way it'll be hanging in the water. When the thermostat opens, the string will be released and the thermostat will hit the bottom of the pot, and you'll know that it's opened and you can check what the thermometer reads for temp. So most of them you can just push. If I can get it to focus here, yeah, you can just push it open a little bit like that with your fingers, hopefully enough to feed the string through, which doing with one hand might be a problem. Okay. I'm gonna fight with that and then we'll continue here, but that's the idea. You might have to get a second person, one person to push the thermostat open, another person to stick the string through. All right, so I started the water heating when we started here. I've got the thermostat hanging. I should have took a bigger pot, so grab a bigger pot when you're doing this so that there's enough depth that it's not touching the bottom, but you can have it in the water still. So I've got that not touching the bottom of the pot. And so far we're up to 56 Celsius. So let it heat. If the water starts to boil and the thermostat still hasn't hit the bottom of the pot, then we know it's stuck. All right, so we're trying again here. I got a bigger pot, a thicker piece of string that hopefully will still demonstrate what we're trying to do here. And we'll start heating it up again and see if we get a different result. If it falls off at 65 again, then somebody put the really wrong thermostat in, and also means it's not our overheating problem. So let's see what happens. Okay, so that let go at like 82 and a half Celsius. So to me that says there isn't anything wrong with the thermostat, at least at this point. Now maybe with it being in hot water, no, it would have had hot water on the spring side before. So I think we might have a water pump problem instead. I think this thermostat's okay, but I think what we'll also do for now is put it back together without a thermostat and get it good and heated up and then flushed a few times. And if it's still overheating with no thermostat in it, it means our water pump is toast. You actually can see right through there. You can see through to the pot now, so the thermostat's wide open and we're at barely at 84 and a half Celsius. So thermostat's definitely okay, which yeah, probably means water pump is where we gotta look next. All right, so I'm thinking since we're this far already, we might as well continue and get the, I don't know how I'm gonna do this so that you can actually see what I'm doing here. And I can do what I need to do. Stay. Okay. I think we might as well pull the water pump since we're this far already. And if it needs a water pump, then we're buggered for today. Can't go any further until I get a water pump for it because I don't have one. If it's not the water pump, then we'll put it back together, provided the gasket's still okay, and put it together with no thermostat and try running it and see if it still overheats. I'm thinking it's probably the water pump based on what we found so far and research that I've done. So the fan has to come off, the fluid clutch fan has to come off of the water pump shaft. So I'm not sure what metric size the hex is, but I started with a big adjustable wrench and I figured out what the size was, and then I tried to find a metric wrench. We don't have one big enough here. I think it's around like 25 or 26 millimeter. Somebody can help me out with that in the comments. But I found a 1.25 inch imperial wrench, which fits pretty darn close. The clutch is left-hand thread onto the water pump shaft, so you got to try and hold the shaft somehow. I got lucky here. I tried this off camera to see if it was going to even work. I expected this to be completely and totally seized and there'd be no way we'd ever get it apart, but I just used a screwdriver to counter hold and use the 1.25 inch wrench. It wasn't too bad at all to crack it loose. And then I don't know if I can get my hands in here to undo it, but you're going to turn it clockwise, viewed from the front of the engine, and you just unthread it here and get it out of the way so we can get to the water pump. So then the next thing will be to remove the alternator belt, which, based on how slack that is, I'm thinking we don't even have to touch the tensioner for right now. But when we put it back together, we'll go over how to do the tensioner. But basically, I don't know if I can, maybe I can show it here. It's kind of nice, similar to the Mark IIs for V-belts. This thing has 3 V-belts, of course. So that guy there, can't see it while I'm pointing to it. That one is the adjuster. You can see there's a bit of a tooth rack that it goes along there. So you'll have to loosen the back side of that adjuster bolt and potentially the bottom mount, which I can't even see here. But you loosen the pivot mount on the bottom probably, and that adjuster one there. Then you can turn that adjuster bolt and wind the alternator in, which will let you loosen the belt enough to get it off. Because the belt is so loose already, I'm thinking we'll just be able to take those 4 cap screws out of the water pump pulley and just slip the pulley off with the belt the way it is. So we'll give that a try. And then when we put it all back together, we'll tighten it up properly. When I started it up today, I heard a belt squeak out of it, so I know the belt was loose. So those guys are probably 10 millimeter as well. I'm ready with the socket. And the belt, you're just gonna have to kind of work around it, because the only way you can get the alternator belt off is by taking off the other 2 belts. So we're just gonna kind of tuck it over there for now. If I can get it to tuck down here actually out of the way, it would be good. There we go. Alright, so there's our water pump now. It is held in by 3 for sure 10 millimeter cap screws. I can't tell what the 4th is. It looks, there's an internal hex cap screw there, but I can't tell if it's part of the water pump or not. I think it might very well be. We'll take out those 3 first. And there'll probably be another round of Niagara Falls when you go to take the water pump out. guess for whatever reason, the fourth one on the water pump is a internal hex, bigger than 6 mil though, or 5 mil from before. Yeah, 6 millimeter for this upper cap screw that's for whatever reason internal hex. So now, to try and crack it loose, try bar here gently. Well, that's some good news at least. I'm just turning the water pump and I'm looking in the thermostat housing hole and the coolant is moving. So that might say that the water pump's actually okay. But it would be nice to pull it out and look at it. But the downside to that too is it might need a new gasket then. I don't have a new gasket for it. I think based on that, the water pump's okay, so I think we'll put it back, put it all back together minus the fan clutch for now, and put the thermostat housing on with no thermostat in it, and add a bit more coolant to make sure it's full. And I think we'll try running it like that and see if the coolant circulates like it's supposed to. Going to tighten these up by hand for now, because I imagine we'll probably have to have it apart again not too long from now, and I will get proper torque specs when we get to that point. Okay, so we'll put the belt and the pulley back on just like they were before. And yes, it's slack, but it should be tight enough for now to drive the water pump and see it work. Okay. Alright, so then it's back to thermostat housing.